In 1980, Leonard, a staunch skeptic from Lexington, Kentucky, set out for the Great Smoky Mountains with his friends Marek, Luca, and Dmitri. The group was looking for just another camping and hunting adventure, giving no credit to legends or supernatural stories. The first night was marked by an almost boring tranquility, a lit bonfire, casual conversation, and an isolated clearing where the silence was so dense that not even animals dared to interrupt it. The wind cut through the trees, but Leonard felt something strange in the air, an unsettling absence of natural sounds. Tired, everyone settled in. However, in the early morning, Leonard awoke with an unease he couldn't explain. The silence seemed to have become absolute, suffocating, as if the whole world had stopped. He looked at his friends, all sleeping deeply, and decided to go for a walk around the edge of the campsite. The cold night cut through his skin, and the solitude weighed more than ever. As he walked, he heard a low sound, like something heavy dragging through the vegetation. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't the wind, it was deliberate, slow, menacing. Leonard stood still, trying to identify the source, but the sound disappeared as quickly as it arose. He returned to the tent, but the discomfort did not leave him. He knew something was wrong, even without proof. The next day, nothing seemed out of the ordinary for Marek, Luca, and Dmitri. The group occupied themselves with hunting, trying to ignore any sense of strangeness. Leonard, however, felt watched, as if the forest had eyes. The day passed slowly, and night arrived with a silent tension. Sitting around the campfire, everyone tried to relax, but the atmosphere was different. Around 11 p.m., Marek commented that he had heard something strange. Dmitri laughed, saying they were just forest sounds. But then a heavy, dragging sound erupted, coming from all directions at once. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't the wind. It was as if something was surrounding the campsite. Fear, until then contained, took hold of the group. Marek stood up, nervous, saying that it wasn't normal. Leonard, who had always scoffed at others' fear, felt the same dread. They decided to investigate, thinking it might be an animal. But the sound seemed to play with them, changing direction, getting closer, and at the same time, impossible to locate. Luca, further ahead, suddenly stopped and shouted. He saw something. Leonard ran to him, but couldn't see anything. Luca was pale, trembling, and ran back to the tent without saying a word. The silence returned, but it was a heavy silence, charged with threat. No one could sleep that night. The fear was palpable, and every shadow seemed to hide something. When the sun finally rose, it was as if the forest was darker, the shadows denser. Marek, Luca, and Dmitri were quiet, avoiding any mention of what had happened. Leonard knew that everyone had been marked by that night, even if no one wanted to admit it. The decision to leave was silent, almost automatic. They packed up the camp without exchanging glances, each lost in their own thoughts. The footprints on the trail seemed deeper, as if carrying the weight of fear. The way back was done in silence, and when they finally left the forest behind, they felt a relief mixed with the certainty that something had been left unfinished. Leonard never returned to the Great Smoky Mountains. The trail of footprints, the shadows that seemed to move on their own, all of it accompanied him for years. Whenever he met with his friends, the subject was avoided, as if talking about it could bring back whatever was in that clearing. Time passed, but the impact of that night never disappeared. Leonard, once skeptical, came to respect the inexplicable. He didn't become a believer in legends, but he learned that there are things in nature that defy all logic. The absolute silence of the mountain, the dragging sound in the vegetation, the shared fear, all of it was etched in his memory. His friends went their separate ways, but all carried the mark of what they had experienced. The group, once united by the search for adventure, was now bound by a dark secret, a silent pact never to speak of what happened that night. Sometimes Leonard would close his eyes and see the shadows moving, feel the cold of the night, and hear the dragging sound echoing in his mind. The fear was no longer of something concrete, but of the unknown, of what cannot be seen or explained. The forest, with its vastness and silence, became a symbol of the mystery that inhabits the world. The experience changed Leonard forever. Skepticism gave way to humility in the face of the inexplicable, an acceptance that not everything can be understood or controlled. The silence of the mountain was now a constant reminder that the unknown is always lurking. Leonard's account is a warning to all who venture into wild places. Respect the silence, pay attention to the signs, and never underestimate the power of the unknown. Sometimes the real danger is not what you see, but what you feel. The weight of an invisible gaze, the sound that doesn't fit, the fear that paralyzes. The Great Smoky Mountains forest remains, imposing and mysterious, guarding its secrets. And Leonard, even from afar, knows that there are things that can never be explained. If you ever find yourself alone in an isolated clearing, remember Leonard's story. Silence can be more threatening than any noise, and shadows can hide more than simple animals. Respect for the unknown is the best shield against what cannot be seen. Leonard's experience serves as a reminder that nature is beautiful but also unforgiving. Fear, when ignored, can turn into something much larger, a nightmare that stays with you forever. Today, Leonard lives far from the mountains, but the past never left him. The silence of the forest, the dragging sound, the fear shared with his friends, all of it is part of who he became. The adventure that was supposed to be just another one turned into a turning point, a milestone between before and after. Encounters with friends are rare, and the subject of that night remains buried, but everyone knows what happened there marked each of them deeply and indelibly. If you liked this account, remember, there are mysteries that will never be unraveled, and stories that only make sense to those who lived them. The silence of the mountain is one of them, a skeptic's nightmare that defies reason and remains alive in the memory of those who dared to face it.